Hey guys, what's up? It's me, Thomas. Tonight we're back here with the VC Andrews Critiquer. Yep, yes, we do another one of his. Today's oldest versus medium versus newest is on the Taking of Pelham 123. So basically, think of this as Die Hard, but on trains. You know, hijacking, ransom, trying out with the hijackers. Basically how it goes. I had to look it up because I was kind of curious, so I didn't look up anything on the plot, just mostly the premise. That's it. Anyway, so let's see which one wins. Oldest, medium, or the newest? Let's find out. Be sure to like, subscribe for more. Hope you enjoy. Let's begin.
Hello fans, it's the VC Andrews Critiquer here with another train-themed oldest versus median versus newest. Hey, what can I say?
I like trains.
Anyway, have you guys noticed how the majority of train-themed works out there are pretty freaking dark? Hell, I recently did a comparison of one of the darkest train-themed stories, Murder on the Orient Express. So today I thought I'd switch things up a bit and do a review of a more lighthearted train-themed story.
Nice
no,
choice.
not that one.
Lighthearted?
Good guess, but no. What is with you people? No, today I'm doing
You're the
a
one
review of
that
a
did
movie
it.
that's not especially well known, but is indeed very heartwarming, sweet, and a joy for boys and girls everywhere. It's a lovely train-themed story about a journey through New York City, The Taking of Pelham 123. It's a very happy day in a very big town called New York City. Boys and girls are boarding the subway with their parents prepared to go on a wonderful adventure throughout the town. And joining them is some creepy as hell character with atrocious special effects to teach them all about the wonders of the big city. Oh look, there's the engineer. He's the man who drives the train. And here comes our friend Mr. Blue, here to applaud him.
Is that Robert Downey
See
Jr.?
what you...
Uh-oh.
Holy God, what do you want?
Open the door or I'll blow your head off.
Wait,
Yep.
that's not so lighthearted.
Back up, lady. Whoa, what the hell are you doing?
Get your foot off the mic pedal or shoot it off.
Hold on, this is supposed...
Holy
Okay,
crap.
yeah, you get the joke. This isn't a lighthearted train story at all.
Nope.
It's probably the most
Hostage
fucking
film.
dark and disturbing one in all existence, in fact. But that's what makes it so damn good. Okay, so let's get into the real story.
Thank you.
So yeah, four disturbingly cold-blooded terrorists hijack a subway called Pelham 123. Called so because it departs from Pelham Station at 1:23 p.m. each day. After severing the engine from the rest of the train and holding the 16 passengers there and the conductor hostage, they contact the transit police dispatcher Garber with their demands. For the release of the hostages, they want a ransom sum of...
$1 million.
Don't you think we should maybe ask for more than $1 million? $1 million isn't exactly a lot of money these days.
Well,
Ain't
they
wrong
do ask
here.
for $5 and $10 million in the median and newest respectively, and the city of New York has only 1 hour to comply or one hostage will die every minute past the deadline, and if they send a SWAT team after them or do anything else to rescue the hostages by force without paying the ransom,
We
They're all
will begin
dead.
killing the hostages immediately.
so Garber passes the demands on to the mayor and city hall, and unable to think of any other way to rescue the passengers, they agree to the hijackers' demands. There's just one small catch. When the hijackers said they had 1 hour to comply, they didn't mean to just verbally agree to pay the ransom, they meant they had to have the money in just 1 hour. And New York City now only has 26 minutes to get it to them. And unfortunately, they are not interested in Garber's pleas for more time, and they make it painfully clear that they have no problem whatsoever with harming the children on board. Can Garber and the New York City government deliver the money in time? So yeah, this movie is not insanely well known, and personally I think that's partly because hijackings in New York City aren't really the best combination anymore. So Hollywood may have kind of wanted to bury this film under the radar. But regardless of its uncomfortable parallels to that dreadful day, this story is every bit as captivating as it is dark. But which version is the best? Well, let's find out. This is oldest versus median versus newest, The Taking of Pelham 123.
Here we go. Well, let's see if they can figure this out.
So what better way to start off this subway hijacking comparison than by looking at, well, the hijackers. Yeah, I know it's kind of odd to start with the villains of a story first, but said hijackers are arguably the biggest characters in the story, and let's be honest, they're the ones you guys want to hear about first. I know they are.
Yeah, come on.
So anyway, can these Manhattan hijackers match the evilness of the Manhattan hijackers from 2001? Well, let's find out with Best Hijackers.
Here we go. Start the heist.
I think it goes without saying that hijackers are terrible people in both fiction and real life, but
Amen.
the hijackers in this movie take evil to a new level. Not only are they perfectly willing to blow a child's brains out for money, but they're also extremely rude, impatient, foul-mouthed, sexually perverted, and even racist in the oldest. Point is, these are some pretty frickin' evil terrorists. But being evil alone is not
It
what
only
makes
shows
them
that they're willing to do
villains,
anything to
so
get the
who has
money.
that honor? Let's look at the newest first. Here, John Travolta plays the leader writer, aka Mr. Blue, and
Hey, Blue.
the other hijackers actually don't do a whole lot in this version. But
Ouch.
thankfully, Travolta is actually so delightfully over the top, he seems like he has the personality of 4 people all by himself.
You don't have to tell the cops that they don't tell me how to do it or how it's gonna be. I fucking tell them. Don't you ever leave me again. Or I'll hunt you down and I'll kill you. I talked to God.
That's good. What'd he say?
He said I should trust in him. All others pay cash. How soon can you get it down here?
Hell, he might even outshine Castor Troy in the hamminess department. Plus, Travolta may actually be the most evil of
he
the 3
did-
gang leaders. Not only does he shoot the most amount of hostages in this version, one of which just because the transit police wouldn't have him continue negotiating with Garber like he wanted, but he probably threatens to shoot the children the most in this version, and comes very close to actually doing it, only failing since a passenger was willing to sacrifice their life for them. And the way he tortures Garber about his past similar to his... Wait, I'd actually rather save that for the best Garber round.
Yeah,
So
save for
yeah,
Garber.
Travolta sounds amazing in this movie, so he must be the winner, right? Well,
not so much.
almost. As much as I love Travolta in this film, he did have one big problem. When you're pulling off a
Outshine the
hijack in
others.
a subway tunnel that's hard to escape from, you need to be a calculating genius at Danny Ocean level. And Travolta...
Not so
well,
much.
he never really struck me
He's
as
more
someone who
gung-ho.
was particularly cunning or calculating. He just kind of felt more like a street thug rather than a criminal mastermind, and on top of that, a pretty mentally insane one. Compare him to, say, Castor Troy. Troy was also hilariously over the top and crazy, but he was still a calculating and super intelligent villain with the mental capacity to plot a nuclear bombing and theft of his arch-enemy's life. It sucks because
Again,
Travolta
that's
actually
Travolta.
was very intimidating in this movie while still being over the top. That's pretty hard to do, and by all accounts, Travolta should have won this one. But I just didn't buy him as someone with the brains to pull off a job as elaborate as this, and it was kind of disappointing that the other villains got pushed to the side at the end of the day. Okay, so now we're down to the oldest and median. The gang's leaders here, played by Robert Shaw, aka Quint from Jaws, and Vincent D'Onofrio, seem much more like criminal masterminds smart enough for a job like this. The way they demand the money to be delivered and the tracks to be set for their getaway, it's clear they've been plotting the scheme longer than Danny Ocean has plotting his casino robbery. And on top of that, the rest of the gang is developed in this version too. Like Mr. Gray is the most foul-mouthed and perverted one, Mr. or Miss Brown in the median as the most short-tempered one, and Mr. Green is the only one with any conscience at all. But here's my problem with the median. Even though both gangs are extremely evil, maybe not as much as Travolta, but they're still pretty cold-blooded, the terrorists in the median felt a bit, well, young for lack of a better word. Not that younger people can't be intimidating, but most people agree that Frollo is a bit more intimidating than Hans. It doesn't help that the terrorists also act a bit childish in this version. The arguments the hijackers had in the oldest felt like those of cold-blooded criminals, but in the median, they kind of felt more like spats between a kid brother and sister.
Blow it out of your ass, Colonel. I'm not your Mr. Brown.
I once had a man shot for talking to me like that.
Well, that's the difference between us. I've always done my own killing.
Kid's gotta pee.
So?
So take him.
Why me?
Just do it.
I want some heavy artillery with me.
Mr. Gray, I won't ask you again.
Blow it out of your ass, Mr. Blue.
Oh!
What he says so we can get the hell out of here, will you?
So long, folks. Bunch of losers.
I was sitting there. I didn't see your name on it. It's right there. Bart, don't write on the rug.
That just sucks out all the fear and respect you have for them. Plus, just look at Robert Shaw. He looks like a friggin' James Bond villain, and he acts like it too. Like, compare this scene.
We are holding 17 passengers and the conductor hostage in the first car. I am quite prepared to kill any or all of them if you do not obey my commands to the letter. Have I made myself quite clear?
We are heavily armed. We are holding hostages, and we will not hesitate to kill any and all of them if you do not do precisely as we say. Am I making myself clear?
Even if he didn't have a machine gun, I probably still would be scared of Shaw enough to obey his every whim. Dion Forio I could tell was trying, but he just was not that intimidating. Again, maybe that's partly because he seemed a bit too young, but he just didn't send shivers down my spine like Shaw did.
Gray in the
Hell,
median
look at
too.
the other gang members. These all look like dudes you do not want to mess with. Even the nicest one, Mr. Green, comes off a bit creepy, though I do love how the one in the median is played by Dr. Glassman from The Good Doctor. Plus, unlike the median or newest, the hijackers actually wear disguises for the job. Not great ones, but they did at least try to hide their identities. But what really sealed it for me was the fact that the hijackers are racist in the oldest, and even say the N-word at one point.
Shut your mouth and keep it shut.
So yeah, while all three terrorist groups were beyond evil, the newest just didn't have the brains, and the median just didn't have the intimidation. The oldest had all of it, thus making for the most effective gang of terrorists. Point goes to the oldest.
Then you're even more incompetent than I gave you credit for.
Liar! Motherfucking liar!
Yeah, it really goes to show you really got to be careful what you're dealing with, masterminds. They don't care who they have to shoot. They will shoot. And honestly, with the oldest, yeah, definitely one more to the cunning. Which, when it comes to, hijacking and demanding ransoms, you gotta be both cunning and ruthless. The other two, a little too ruthless, not enough cunning. Like, let's be real. It would just take one little easy slip around to get them. Anyway, moving along. Oldest time.
Okay, so now that we've covered the antagonist, let's cover the protagonist. You can't just put anyone against hijackers. You need only the most experienced and qualified folks out there. But since there weren't any of those folks available, we'll have to settle for somewhat less conventional approaches.
Ouch. Okay.
Okay, maybe not quite that unconventional. This is Best Garber.
Alright, wrong Garber.
This is second Best Garber.
There you go. Alright, let's see who can outwit them best. Bring it on, Garber.
Lieutenant Garber, or Biscotti as he's called in the median, maintaining his name from the original novel, is played by Walter Matthau, Edward James Olmos, and Denzel Washington, respectively. And Denzel Washington wins this one, because he's one of the greatest actors who ever lived, right? Well, yes, obviously, but there's more than just that. So it's because he's the most badass and intimidating cop of the three, and thus the worthiest opponent to the hijackers, right? Actually, no. This Garber's just the dispatcher, and unlike every other Denzel Washington role I've seen, he's timid, introverted, and even a bit socially awkward. But why is he the best? Well, for one, he has the most screen time and involvement in the story. Like, the hijackers decide to have him be the one to take the money to them, and even use him to drive the train for their getaway, allowing him to partake the most in the climax of thwarting them. And like I had said before, Travolta enjoyed talking to Garber so much, he shot a hostage just so they would let Garber continue negotiating with him when John Turturro came to take over. Garber in the first two movies is just kind of, there. We don't know much about his backstory or motives, and with the screen time he has, he just barely qualifies as the main protagonist of the story. Now with that said, Matthau and Olmos are still very talented actors, and they use their respective talents to make the most of this character. Matthau plays Garber like a Jim Hopper prototype. Dry, not so politically correct, but still full of snarky, hilarious comments left and right, making him pretty fun to watch.
Might interest you to know I figured out how you're gonna do it.
Yes, it would interest me very much.
You're gonna make every man, woman, and child in New York City close their eyes and count to 100, right? Somebody down there knows how to drive a train. You don't pick that up watching Sesame Street and tell me when it's at 8.
Olmos plays Garber. Yeah, I don't really care that he's called Piscotti in the median. I like the name Garber better.
Yeah, that's different.
Anyway,
Garber.
Olmos plays him like a late 90s, early 2000s cop thriller series cop. badass,
So
somewhat
weird
intimidating,
lighting for the
even a
media,
bit
I
like
gotta
he has
say.
burn marks from fire on his face. He feels like a character straight out Criminal Minds or CSI.
Command Center to Pelham 123. The money's in the tunnel and you shoot somebody? That wasn't the deal, Blue. Do the honorable thing. Put it down. This is over.
And like Hopper, while they definitely aren't the friendliest people, it's clear the safety of the hostages is their #1 priority, and they want to save them at any cost necessary. But again, Garber doesn't really get the focus he needs as the main character in these versions, so neither take is able to come off especially intriguing.
Alright, guys.
I like Denzel Washington's shy, timid performance the best for a few reasons. One, since when would you ever
Out of his
expect
element.
this to be the kind of character Washington plays? Washington could have easily captured Mathau's snarky, dry, cynical take and almost as intimidating Criminal Minds like one, but instead he's given a direction you'd least expect him to take, and he honestly crushes it.
You may be the last friend I ever make.
Well, I hope you're wrong, Mr. Ryder. But, you know, I'm just a guy. I'm just a guy on the other end of the mic. They got no proof. I don't care what they decide. They don't need, it doesn't matter whether they decide.
And then is this when they demoted you?
We can all hear you here. Yes.
Seriously, if this was the first Denzel Washington role I'd ever seen, I never in a million years would have guessed that this actor typically plays dramatic, intimidating roles.
True
Plus, he
equalizer.
ironically does the best job of reasoning and negotiating with the hijackers. Mathau would almost try to use logical arguments with them, like how they don't stand a chance of making a getaway from an underground subway tunnel, or how every hostage they let go is an argument their attorney can make in court. And of course, this accomplishes absolutely nothing because terrorists don't listen to logic. Washington is able to get through to Travolta by making an emotional connection with him, by which I mean feeding his ego and talking to him like they're lifelong buds at a bar on St. Patrick's Day. And
Sounds
it
good.
works. No, he doesn't let the hostages go, but this does keep him content enough to buy the police some time with getting the ransom money over. And unlike the first two movies, this Garber is actually fairly developed. Not only does he have a family in this version, but he also has a somewhat questionable past. We learned that he used to be a pilot, but because he drank on a flight, he lost his pilot license and was arrested, even though he saved an airplane in a nosedive from... Wait. Sorry, wrong Denzel Washington
that's
movie.
Sully.
But that is one of my favorite movies ever. No, Garber actually used to be a subway driver who was suspended from the position because when he was chosen to select a new train from foreign manufacturers, he allegedly took a bribe when making his decision. Ryder finds out about these rumors and threatens to kill one of the kids to get a confession out of him. But then we learn why Garber took the bribe.
I use the money for my kids, all right? To pay my children's tuition. I have a 17-year-old, I have a 19-year-old daughter. And I use the money to pay for their college tuition, all right?
I'm a goddamn hero, you know that?
Mine too. Now, I can't act like this new direction benefited the story altogether, but we'll talk more about that in the best story round.
Right.
But definitely benefited Garber's character. Even though Mathau and Olmos brought all their comedic and dramatic ability to their tanks, neither one was especially
so much
developed, so there was only so much they could offer. Washington's was the most developed, the best acted, and honestly the most interesting. So newest will take this point.
There you go.
Point
Newest
goes to
goes
the newest.
After this is over, you should seek out psychiatric help.
They don't know anything.
See ya. Newest takes this one.
But of
Which
course,
makes
you
sense.
can't take down terrorists all by yourself. Hell, it took Bush over 10 years to track down Bin Laden with oodles of money and manpower. Well, actually, I don't know how
Obama
much
had
was
to do that
invested
part.
into tracking him, but that's beside the point. Anyway, my point is, you need help to bring down terrorists, so why don't we take a look at Best Supporting Cast?
Go. Let's see who helps out the most.
Please note that I've decided to give the hostages a category of their own, so this round is
Fair.
really all the remaining characters. I guess we should
Little
start with
hostages.
Garber's friend and more or less sidekick in the case. All three versions will help Garber in any way they can, but Jerry Stiller's Rico Patron wins this one. One, because
Really?
he's Jerry Stiller, and thus is loaded with friggin' awesome comedic one-liners.
You won't believe it.
You know me, I'll believe anything.
The train's been hijacked.
I don't believe it.
Well, I'm the Garber.
Even great men have to pee.
Just letting you know the track's cleared all the way to South Ferry.
Thank you. Give the lieutenant my regards.
You can do it yourself at the arraignment.
But more importantly, he's Garber's best friend in this version, and the two have a pretty good bond with each other. And Lorraine Bracco does fine as the female private detective version of the character Inez Ray, but isn't nearly as funny and feels only like a decently close friend to Garber rather than a best lifelong friend. And Turturro's take, called Vincent Caminetti, has only known Garber a couple hours, seeing how he was a hostage negotiator they called in for assistance. So needless to say, they don't really have a whole lot of chemistry with each other. But I will say, Turturro does a pretty good job as the authoritative but caring cop, and you can tell he's really impressed with Garber's courage to admit to what he did to save that kid's life, and even defends him for it later.
Trust your man here? He confessed to a felony 20 minutes ago.
In my opinion, there are people down there who are alive because of him. Until we change the rules or hope runs out, we should stick with the situation we have now.
Although I am pretty pissed that even when Travolta threatened to kill a hostage if Garber couldn't be involved with the negotiation anymore, he still insisted on handling the case himself and only gets Garber after Travolta draws fire. When a terrorist threatens a hostage, you do what they tell you, asshole. But you know, what really sealed it for me with Jerry Stiller was the fact that he's actually the one to figure out the hijacker's seemingly impossible getaway plan from the subway tunnel.
I'm listening.
They're gonna fly the train to Cuba.
You're a sick man, Rico.
True, but he wouldn't be a Jerry Stiller role if he wasn't. And as for the rest of the cast, I gotta give it to the oldest for them as well. Why? Really? Well, the newest actually reduces a lot of the side characters to extras with barely any lines, like the head of command center, the police chief, the cop duo driving the money, or the rookie cop keeping an eye on things in the tunnel. And even drops a few altogether, like the line supervisor who gets shot or the mayor's wife. And what helps make them enjoyable in the oldest, especially the asshole ones like the supervisor and director, is the film's crude, Comedy Central-like sense of humor.
Yeah, the
You'll have to move on my bus. What do you mean you haven't got any buses? Go out and hijack some.
Oh, come on. If I gotta watch my language just because they let a few broads in, I'm gonna quit. How the hell can you run a goddamn railroad without swearing?
I'm warning you two guys. If I don't see your faces before the deadline, I don't want to see them at all, ever.
Yes, sir, we'll make it. We'll never make it.
Resume delivery on the double.
And I don't suppose we could have that in writing.
Most of their portrayals in the median are a bit generic. So when characters like the command center head were being a jerk, I wasn't laughing, I just wanted to smack him in the face. So, are there any characters that all three versions share? Well, I guess there is the mayor of New York City, and my favorite version is the oldest, played by Lee Wallace, kind of for the same reasons as I like Washington's Garber the best. He's a wimpy, weak-willed dude suffering from a bad fever, and probably the last person you want in charge of a crisis like this. But that's what makes him so memorable.
Warren, goddammit, this city hasn't got $1 million.
Then you better empty out one of your Swiss bank accounts because there's no other way out.
What are they going to say, Warren?
They who?
Who? Everybody. The press, the man on the street.
He means the voters. The Times is gonna support you, the News is gonna knock you, the Post will take both sides at the same time, the rich will support you, likewise the blacks, and the Puerto Ricans won't give a shit.
I know $1 million sounds like a lot of money. But just think what you're gonna get in return.
What?
18 sure votes.
He's not a bad dude, even if he apparently has secret Swiss bank accounts, just hilariously unqualified to be mayor of one of the biggest cities in the world. The mayor in the newest is pretty likable though. He's a fairly competent leader and also pretty caring. Like, he decides to pay the hijackers the ransom pretty quickly, even when his colleagues try to talk him out of it. I can't say the same for the mayor in the median, who initially wouldn't even consider paying the ransom. Really just because he thinks New York is too dignified to give in to terrorists.
How about just getting the money just as an option?
Do your job. We don't want options.
Refined engines such as I should never get up this early. It's bad for our chug.
Oh, and listen to this line.
The snipers don't miss. So maybe we lose 1 or 2. That's not bad out of 8. As long as it's not a child.
I guess I shouldn't be too hard on him because he does humble himself and agree not long afterwards. But I'm sorry, when you say things like that, it's pretty hard to forgive you. There's also a character exclusive to the oldest, Sergeant Daniels. While not particularly funny, he's undoubtedly the most qualified cop on the force in this movie. He's smart, he's badass, he's authoritative, he's quick on his feet, and he is just as determined as Garber to rescue the hostages and bring the hijackers to justice. I actually kind of wished he went with Garber to confront the terrorists in the oldest. Would have loved to have seen him kick their asses all the way to the NYC penitentiary. I do like how we see Garber's wife in the newest, but we only see her very briefly, so there's not much to say with her. So yeah, for having the most amount of, the most memorable, and the most helpful side characters here, Oldest will take
takes
another
number
point
2.
with this one. Point goes to the Oldest.
You make me ashamed to say that I work for the city of New York.
Now, why did you do that?
Yeah, fair enough. Usually the newest always focus on the side pieces, or at least the side characters. Here, kind of actually surprisingly the opposite again. You know, the main character gets the newest. The side characters are oldest. Actually kind of interesting when you look at them, you know? Well, oldest leading 2-1. 2 votes. Newest 1, median, hasn't even hit the board. Got 2 rounds left. Will oldest be able to hold the lead? Well, let's find out.
Hostages. Arguably a criminal's greatest insurance, since no moral authority figure would dare harm a criminal when there are possibly innocent lives in the crossfire. But hostages have proven in the past that they can be more than just damsels in distress, or people in distress. Hell, the ones on Flight 93 were freaking able to overpower their hijackers and stop the plane from crashing into the Capitol building. But can the hostages in this story be just as useful?
I've heard.
Well, let's find out with Best Hostages.
Let's see who bounces back the best. Let's go.
So which depiction of the hostages is the best? Well, this is actually the first point I'm going to give to the median, mostly because the hostages in this version do a bit more than just cower and cry. Well, at least some of them do anyway. Take, for instance, the 2 boys that the terrorists constantly threaten. In the other 2 movies, they're riding with their mom, but in this version, they're riding alone and planning to meet up with her. I like this better because, 1, it leads to one of the few legit funny lines in the median.
She said she called 911 if we're not home in exactly 38 hours.
Minutes.
Hey, considering this version's supreme lack of humor compared to the other 2, I'll take that gag anytime. But more importantly, it makes the whole situation even scarier for them. Being a little kid trapped in a hijacked subway with your parents is scary enough, but just imagine
By
not
themselves?
having them there.
Yikes.
Because of this, the older brother has to be the parent here, and you can tell he's really doing his best to stay calm and be there for his little bro. Another thing I really like is that the terrorists opt to have the boys be the one to open the ransom bags to make sure the cops wouldn't try to slip any dye packs in it. I'm honestly surprised Robert Shaw didn't think of that. Can't really say that for Travolta because, again, he didn't seem like an extreme forward thinker. There's also... Actually, we'll get to that in just a bit. So let's talk a little bit about the hostages in the other 2 versions. Sorry it's so short, but again, the hostages really don't have much to offer. I guess the sense of humor of the oldest helps them stand out a bit more, but even then, their one-liners are noticeably less funny than most of the other ones.
Isn't that wonderful?
Hostages.
What did you think? Guess.
Hey, Mom, are those field guns?
Shh. Would you mind telling us now how much you're getting? Well, a person likes to know his worth. $1 million. That's not so terrific.
Okay, that last one was pretty funny, but the rest are just kind of...
meh.
The only passenger in the median that's a true comic relief is the old guy. And like the boys, he's nowhere near on par with the one-liners of most of the cast the oldest, but when picking him or the hostages and the oldest as comedians, I'd pick him any day.
Fair.
This is boring.
Be happy it's so boring.
Nobody's supposed to talk.
Nobody's talking.
And as for the newest, really the only memorable thing about them was one of the passengers sacrificing their life to save the youngest child from being shot, and the way he stands up to this dude armed with a machine gun, this is a real hero. Oh yeah, and one of the 2 boys is FaceTiming his girlfriend while all this is going on, and she posts this on her site, which does help the cops keep an eye on things in the train. But while I do like the concept, it's not nearly as explored as I feel it should have been. But anyway, now let's talk about my favorite character in the median, the conductor. Granted, she doesn't have much of a competition, seeing how the conductor in the newest, or rather the motorman in this case, gets shot pretty early on. He's the passenger Travolta shot when they threatened to not have Garber involved with the negotiation anymore. Oops. And the one the oldest survives much longer, but again, he pretty much just cowers and freaks out along with the rest of the passengers. And fair enough, I would too if I were in his shoes.
Yeah, I mean,
but
he
the
didn't
one
have a
the
gun.
media
What was
knows
he
that
gonna
she's
do?
the only authority figure in this situation, or so she thinks, but more on that in a bit. So she does everything she can to be composed and helpful during this crisis. Hell, she almost seems like she isn't even scared of the hijackers.
Yo, why don't you let the kids go?
Nobody asked you, bitch.
Yo, watch your mouth. Watch yours.
You need ovaries to stand up like that to a psycho
No
bitch
kidding,
armed
big
with a
on us.
machine gun. But her bravery isn't the extent of her helpfulness. Since the boys aren't with their mother, she kind of helps the older brother fill the role of the parental figure in this situation. She sings the younger kid a sweet Spanish lullaby to try and comfort him. She helps him go to the bathroom. Hell, she even tries to convince Miss Brown to let him go and tell Blue it was her, even though she knows damn well she'll be shot in a split second. Again, like the other passenger in the newest, it's so admirable she's willing to sacrifice her life for the kid like that. Speaking of Miss Brown, there's even a small subplot where the two form kind of a frenemy relationship. She tries to convince Brown to see reason by relating to her, revealing that she actually used to be a bad gal herself and lost custody of her son over it, but she was able to get him back and get her life back together, and suggests she do the same before it's too late. It doesn't work, but you can tell her words really stuck with her, and she's a bit less crabby for the remainder of the film, especially when the conductor helps treat her gunshot wound. Oh yeah, that reminds me, around the start of the third act, someone fires a shot at the hijackers. Well, Garber thankfully is able to convince him not to make another kill in the newest, see how they've made 3 thus far, and the oldest and median, Ryder makes good on his threat to kill a hostage if they're threatened, and as you probably guessed, picks the conductor, not so convincingly assuring them that they just want them to get off the train to wait for the police bringing the money, and not at all because they want the cops hidden in the tunnel to see them make good on their threat. And sure, it was still very sad when the conductor was shot in the oldest, just as it was with the motorman in the newest, but both were just another wimpy hostage, so I wasn't crying a river. But in the median, it's a really emotional scene since she's presented as such a strong and likable character, and you can see how much her death hits Miss Brown and the 2 kids. Not help that we actually see her death from her perspective, namely falling to the ground, things going blurry, and then lights out. Oh yeah, and there's also an undercover cop on the train who helps thwart the hijackers. More info on that in the next round. And as much as I love gender diversity with them being female in the median, I actually like the oldest one better because their hobo appearance makes them pretty inconspicuous, and the newest one gets shot almost immediately. But yeah, for doing more than just cower in this version,
Pretty much,
median
median
will
takes
get
the win.
this point. Point goes to the median.
That's a first.
Oh, shit.
Who are you?
Got a plan.
I thought you'd have one.
Look at that! Median takes a point! Well, we're down to all.
Now, ladies and gentlemen,
around.
we've reached the big one. Which movie best told this tale of the most terrifying hijacking in New York City after 9/11? This is Best Story.
For anyone that's didn't realize this really happened, just a story. Go on. Here you go. Best story?
First off, let me just say, the general story alone is really engaging as is. It's pretty freaking disturbing how only 4 people with machine guns can bring one of the biggest cities in the world to its knees, isn't it? Or just how low some people are willing to stoop for really no reason other than money. But in this case, the oldest is generally considered the best of the 3. Hell, it has a rare 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, and I gotta go with the crowd on this one.
Really?
But first, let's talk about some things I think the other 2 movies did better. I do like some of the ways they update the story. Like the hijackers in these versions set up motion detectors in the tunnel, which they monitor on laptops so the police couldn't try to have any snipers sneak in and try to shoot them. That does make them more of a legit threat. I also like how they reveal why the snipers drew fire at the hijackers, which again led them to kill a hostage in the first 2 movies. In both cases it was a complete accident, but the oldest never reveals who drew fire or why. I get the intent was to make it more suspenseful, but honestly, it just makes the NYCPD look really bad. The hijackers were very clear that they'd shoot a hostage if they were threatened, and by keeping it vague, this opens the possibility that one of the cops was a self-righteous prick who didn't care about the lives of the hostages. I do think it's better that the media newest clarify it was not on purpose, but I do have some problems with the newer versions as well. The median felt like the majority of Disney remakes today. It felt like a shallow, exact, too similar clone of the oldest, but didn't have what made it so engaging. I get they can't get away with as much with a TV-14 rating as an R rating like the other 2 films, And again, they kind of compensate for this by putting more emphasis on the emotional moments, most notably with the hostages. And yeah, they also can't do as much with a 90s TV movie budget, but sometimes the cheapness of this version can get embarrassingly laughable.
Yeah, like that.
And I don't just mean on account of the shitty-ass camera. Take, for instance, how the police car bringing the money is wrecked. In the oldest, it's because they hit a dumpster, and the newest, it's because they ironically are hit by an ambulance, another emergency vehicle that all cars have to yield to. But in the median, it's wrecked by a crate of sex dummies. Yeah, wow. I am not shitting you. Sex dummies. Yeah, apparently that's enough to wreck a police escort of ransom money meant to save 18 lives. I don't know, maybe they were just trying to be humorous to make up for the low budget. But this is not an appropriate time to finally start being funny. The car's wrecked and innocent people are just minutes away from being shot. Kind of an inappropriate moment for comedy, don't you think? Mm-hmm. Or how about when the police are counting the ransom money? In this version, they just pour out the money bags onto a table in a little room. Again, I get they probably didn't have the budget to film at the New York City Federal Reserve like in the other two versions, but is an interrogation room really the best place for this? And they just seem so lazy and unconcerned when they're counting it. You guys realize there are lives at stake here, don't you? In the oldest, the money counting scene is actually one of my favorite parts of the movie. We never see any of their faces, but you can just as easily feel how much stress and pressure they're under through the music and how quickly they're counting. These feel like people whom the lives of hostages lay in how fast they can prepare the ransom. Okay, so what's wrong with the newest? It did have a lot of what made the original work, the intimidation, the big budget, the hilarious one-liners, and it did at least try to do something different with the story unlike the median. But here's my problem with that. While I love the subplot with Garber they add, and how they give Garber the focus he needs as the main character, there honestly isn't as much focus on the rest of the characters or even the hijacking itself. It's like they thought of a great idea, but then put most of the focus on that and pushed to the side what the story is really about. Because of this, characters like the mayor, the supervisor, the hostages, and especially the other hijackers really feel cast in the shadow because of this. It sucks because had the news put just as much focus on the original story components as it did with its new ideas, it might have actually won this round. The two were a great combination, but no, it put most of the focus just with Washington and Travolta and not the more important part of the story. Now let's talk about the ending. So you may have guessed by now what the hijackers' escape plan is. Just pull the throttle, jump off the train, and send the cops on a wild goose chase after it while they're sneaking out the tunnel. But most of the cops assume this is impossible due to a failsafe called a dead man's feature. Called so because the subway throttle requires a hand pressing down hard on it at all times should the engineer ever be killed while driving. But what they didn't count on was the hijackers being smart enough to disable the feature in the subway. But don't worry, all the passengers survive. Anyway, the ending of the first two versions is basically Mr. Gray gets shot by Ryder for not surrendering his gun, Mr./Miss Brown is shot by the undercover cop, and Ryder commits suicide by shocking himself on the rails when Garber confronts him. And Mr. Green, well, one moment at a time. I actually prefer the climax in the newest overall. It's much more action-packed, with Garber chasing Ryder throughout Manhattan, leading to a big final showdown between the two, and the other hijackers get shot trying to escape earlier. But the very ending of the oldest is hands down the best. The newest just ends with Garber happily heading home from work, but in the first two films, Garber and his partner are going through a list of recently fired subway engineers to try and locate the one hijacker who got away, that being Mr. Green. He almost manages to persuade them he's completely innocent and get away scot-free, but thankfully, we did have this running joke of him sneezing due to a cold throughout the movie, and Garber constantly saying to him,
Gesundheit.
Look, that is hands down the best ownage face in history. I'm not sure if even the 50 years to life Mr. Green was going to get in prison hurt as much as that face math outcast to him.
Gotcha!
Not quite as memorable in the median, unfortunately. I think that's why I like the oldest one the best. It just has so much, well, moxie to it. It's badass, intimidating, but it also knows when to lighten up and be cynically hilarious. The other two films are fine enough as is, but I could watch this movie 1,000 times and still never get tired of it.
It's in the 100%, I'm not surprised.
This has that rare 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. And thus, the oldest triumphs in this battle of hijacker movies.
I'm going in with tear gas.
You got a sexy voice though, man. He beat my bitch in prison.
And the oldest takes the win. Which, honestly, like he said, considering the 100%, I'm not surprised it won. Which, whew, it really goes to show you, not all good new ideas work. Just gotta do what you gotta do. And the oldest takes the victory. Let me know what you guys think. Hope you enjoyed. See ya.